Howdy nerds, welcome back. This is going to be a bit more of a lighthearted video compared to the last. This one's a bit of a pseudo-parody to the last actually, seeing as I got this idea working on that one. This video also turned a lot more into me telling you about my own art journey in relation to the advice I've got, so let me know if you want a video about comic advice so you don't make the same mistakes I did. Before we get into the video, let's chat about my comics. I announced on my old creator page on Webtoon that Ratu officially finished up drawing seasons 1 and 2, and announced there that Ratu's returning February 10th. Paperclips is uploading its cover page the same day, so you can subscribe to both. The speed paint for today is Paperclips' lines, since I'm finally back to working on Paperclips. So today I just wanted to talk about my art journey from childhood to today, and some advice that I got that I continue to give to anyone who comes to me. Whatever project is in your heart, this is what I've got for you. It's never too late to start, and create something small. Don't start with the big picture. The pros don't start out in the big leagues. You shouldn't expect yourself to be on that level when you're just starting. My comics are my pride and joy. I was never sure as a kid what I wanted to do with my life, and it wasn't until 2020 that I actually committed to comics. If you watch any of my peers' videos, you might hear them talk about how they've been doing comics since they were kids. I cycled through a lot of careers before I landed on comics, and it took a while between starting my art journey and firmly landing in comics. I started my art journey sometime as a kid. As most kids do, I'd randomly draw things when I was handed whatever materials my poor elementary school had. I'd also use whatever markers and crayons I'd asked for and use those to create whatever a kid who's not seriously into art would create. Sometime in middle school, before we moved out of Arizona, I decided I actually liked drawing. We had to create paper dolls in one of my classes during the first week of school, and I kinda just drew like that for a month. Then we moved to Colorado, and I just randomly drew whatever. In 2016, I got into watching YouTubers like Lavender Town and Drawing with Waffles, who were both posting comic content, at least at the time. I got into digital art because of them. That year, I got my first Wacom tablet. Side note, fuck them for the recent AI usage. At the same time, my friends and I had to do some 30-day challenge for school, so some of us decided to do art for the challenge. For your sakes, I'm probably not going to share those pieces, but they were actually mostly old designs, meaning designs I stole from Minecraft skins I'd found, of Mickey and Grant. I also drew Lily a little bit, but I didn't think I'd do anything with those characters I had created in 2015 for anything outside of writing. At the time, it was really just about me being able to create content of them for myself. It wasn't until 2017 that comics fully intrigued me. It was also the year Paperclips came about. But since it was so new, I didn't want to create something with it. I tried, with 2 pages for a class, but I wasn't into it because the story was so new. Instead, I used the first modern AU I'd created for those characters, a story for another day. I created 7 pages of Podgers, a melting pot of magical creatures attending high school. Honestly, I don't remember much of the story. I just know it's the reason Cleo has carrots for pupils. She was part bunny in Podgers. But I gave up soon after, and I didn't commit to comics for another 3 years. Briefly in 2018, though, we had a school project to create superheroes and go into the biology of it. So, for that project, I created a few pages of a comic. Said comic is now rolled into the Clipverse, by the way, so you may actually see that story at some point. I'd also gotten a Wacom Cintiq, again, fuck Wacom, for Christmas that year, which amped up my art journey. Briefly in 2019, I had created a few pages for Paperclips that I'd hated. Those pages have a beginning that you may find familiar. Anyway, now we're talking 2020. The world shut down, I'd graduated high school from home, never wearing my cape and gown, and to this day I say that I only graduated high school because the pandemic had my teachers saying I could turn in old assignments with no punishment. I applied and got into a college, which I dropped out of in early 2023. It was in July of 2020, though, that I finally revisited comics and Paperclips. I was fixated on Paperclips at the time, because those are my guys. That was where I could really see those characters existing. Their canon story be damned. The story had 3 years of development, and now I felt like I had something. Even if basically everything it had then has since been changed after another 3 years of development. So I sat down and started drawing. I'd gotten an iPad as a graduation gift, so I did pages in both Fire Alpaca, my personal favorite computer art program, and it's free, and ProCreate. I decided I preferred ProCreate. I worked on that for a while before creating Ratu in 2021. A shift in the timeline caused Ratu to be bumped up to the same time as Paperclips, meaning I rapidly needed to amp up its production to get its new beginning adapted to a script so pages could start. And they did. In 2022. Then, 2023 hit. I dropped out of college. I hated my pages. Then I had a health crisis the next month. Stopping the comics and dropping out happened the same day, which is why everything may have felt sudden. That basically brings us to today. It's now 2024. Ratu is starting up again next month, but Paperclips won't be starting until a bit over a year from now. So I won't be able to see all this through until Paperclips restarts in 2025. So, what went wrong? Obviously ignoring the fact that I dropped out and had a health crisis at the same time, what happened is that I didn't give myself enough time to experiment and figure out how I'd like everything to be set up. Projects, to start with, are lots of trial and error. I spend too little on trial and too much on error. When I give advice today, I always suggest a mini comic of some kind. You shouldn't start with your magnum opus. You can, however, create something small set in the same universe. Experiment with the webtoon format and the traditional format. Confront yourself with questions like whether or not you want this to be physically published one day. I did. Have since I committed in 2020. But I went with the web format anyway because it was easier. I was also lazier. I wish I had made something set in the CV and done a mini run with 10 to 20 episodes. I know that wouldn't have covered the 67 episodes I'd made between the two comics before deciding to restart, but it would have helped me figure out other things. I can't go back in time. So I've just had to restart. As I said, I cycled through a lot of professions. As a kid, I wanted to be anything, from veterinarian to the president. I eventually landed on art. But then I cycled into writing. I briefly wanted to be a baker. Fun fact, in my high school program we did quarterly presentations. One quarter it was to start a business, so I made a bakery and made brownies to bring. Not from a box, though I adapted a recipe from online. I brought a bunch and I handed them out as samples, and someone who tried them said I should just drop out of high school and bake for a living. Then I cycled back into art and landed specifically on animation. Hated that, so I cycled into writing again. I kept going back and forth with art and writing until I landed on comics. I didn't have any know-how on starting a comic. I got into webcomics in 2016 with Lavender Town and Drawing with Waffles. I got into webtoons later that year, so I just guessed and went from there. It didn't help that I tried a traditional format, however incorrectly, and didn't like it. So I guessed, and went along until I landed on something that was just correct enough and worked just well enough for me to run with it for 2 years, which is how I landed back on the traditional format. Maybe one day we'll all be able to hold physical copies of these comics in our hands. I know I want to. And really, as much as I talk down my art journey and how annoying it's been to have to restart, I'm just gonna leave you with this. You don't have to know from the start what you're gonna do or where you're gonna end up. You just gotta start. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.